Lowe's has the Labor Day deals you need to give your home a new look. Buy one, get one free select interior paint via Visa gift card rebate. Then, add the final touch with 2 for $8 on select 2.5 or 3-quart mums. Refresh your home and save big while doing it. Lowe's, we help, you save. Valid through 9/3. Mums offer in-store only. Selection varies by location. While supplies last. More terms and restrictions apply. See Lowes.com/rebates for details.
This episode is brought to you by PrizePicks. You make decisions every day, but on PrizePicks, being right can get you paid. Look, there are a lot of players I love this upcoming football season, from Tyler Warren to Jamison Williams. Boy, I even like Roma Dunze this year, and it is fun and simple. The whole experience on PrizePicks, it's a great game. Download the app today and use the code DFS to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. That's the code DFS to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. PrizePicks, it's good to be right.
Welcome to the Fantasy Footballers DFS and Betting Podcast with your hosts, Kyle Borganoni and Matthew Betz.
Welcome in September 2nd here on the Fantasy Footballers DFS and Betting Podcast. I'm your host, Kyle Borganoni, and I am joined, as always, by Matthew. You better buckle up, buddy, Betz.
It's going to be a long season, Kyle, but you know what? It's going to be our best yet. Said it last week. Put the good vibes out there. Said somebody's going to ship Thursday Night Showdown contest, so we're already putting the good vibes out there. Week 1 is here. Vibes are high. The boys are back. We got the Tuesday show back. Of course, now we're 2 shows a week. I mean, it's a great time to be alive. The weather's changing a little bit, getting a little cooler, and football is here, brother. I'm excited.
You're on your high horse now, but I'm going to bring you down and tell you, buddy, 8.5? That's quite a line.
Did you see the line before the Micah Parsons trade?
I did not.
It was 6.5. There was, I think it opened 7, if I'm not mistaken, and then obviously it's a key number, right? Down to 6.5, and then with the Micah Parsons trade, balloons up to 8.5. This is the largest spread on the Week 1 slate of any game, Eagles and Cowboys. So, Super Bowl champs at home. They're going to hang the banner, and we'll see what the Cowboys can do. I'm interested to talk about that because I think the general sentiment is like, oh, this Cowboys defense is terrible. The Eagles are going to run all over them, and I'm interested to see what you think about what that means from a DFS perspective in terms of builds and how people go about that. But yeah, man, it should be a really fun slate. Very excited to get things started this year.
Nothing like coming in and knowing the field is a little overconfident about whatever narratives they have, and you're like, all right, for Showdown, I'm going to punch people in the gut. Sounds like I'm going to be playing some George Pickens.
Sticky picky. George
and captain or see you later. It's not on my roster. That's how I'm playing it.
Yeah, we'll talk about it. I think there's a lot of ways that you can build on this slate, which makes it a very fun tournament slate. And like I said, we'll talk about kind of what we think the field will do, whether or not we're sharing those same opinions or not, and go from there. And the fun thing about Showdown is it's really important for people to understand, even though you might think an optimal way to build is how you see the game going and how you want the game to go. We need to remember wild, crazy things happen on a random 1-game slate. So even though I think the Eagles probably win this game and they play very well at home and the Cowboys defense isn't good.
Correct.
In DFS, especially in large field tournaments, the payoff is so massive if you build contrarian that you don't have to be right very often. So it's one of those things you kind of need to separate median expectation with these tail end outcomes, which is kind of what we're shooting for in DFS tournaments anyway.
On this episode, Betz and I will break down that Philly and Dallas game, but we'll also talk Showdown strategy, give you some data about some of the things we're thinking about when we're building lineups for captains and in the flex, what are we utilizing, what type of correlation are we getting, and it's just really important to understand that these are our opinions on a Tuesday. You can start building a lineup. Betz will have an article in the DFS Pass that will highlight this, and every single week we will have an article for Thursday, and then, ta-da, we also will have one this year on Mondays. And so quickly highlight Mondays, and I'll add a little something else that we're adding in the DFS Pass this year. But DFSpass.com if you want all of our picks, all of our rankings, access to the optimizer, everything else. But we have added a lot this year, not just Thursday night picks, but also Monday now.
Yeah, it's excited to have that. There's been a lot of people asking us to do that over the last couple of years, and just quite frankly, like Kyle and I have a lot of other commitments too. So Monday is kind of our reset day to, take a step back and breathe. The nice thing is we brought on Chris Cash, who's been awesome, really good best ball and DFS player. He's going to take that on for us this year. So that will be in the DFS Pass. Chris Cash will have a Monday Night Football breakdown, very similar to what I do for Thursday. So we got each island game covered for you guys this year. And then, of course, all of our content for the main slate. But I'm excited about Mondays because, as always, I love reading your Cash lineup review. We talk about that on the Tuesday show every week. But just it's a good, honest kind of opinion and recap of what happened. Very transparent, so we love that. And then I will be doing, which I'm excited to do, it's new this year, a small field tournament review article. I need to look at DraftKings and look at what contests I'm going to play, but I'm going to play the same single entry small field tournament every single week, show you the lineup I played, kind of talk about why I played the lineup, mistakes I may have made, stuff like that. So excited to add that to the DFS Pass this year. A couple of new articles coming on Monday, Kyle. They said for football, the hot days were Sunday and Thursday night. Mondays are hot this year, dude.
Dude, Mondays are so hot. Also, so we definitely upped the cost of the DFS Pass, right?
Absolutely, yes. This is going to cost you. You might need to get a loan to purchase this product.
No, people, we didn't consult HR at all, which was a dumb idea. But we added some new things. It is going to be funny about that small field because people, they grab my head-to-heads all the time in Cash, and then they see my lineup in the article. People are going, whatever tournament you choose as the small field tournament, you can guarantee that a lot of people that listen to this podcast and our friends in Discord will be bullying you. I mean, I'm going to be one of those people every single week.
I'm terrified. That's the worst when people know where to find you, and they just take your lunch money. It's fine. I don't have 3 kids to feed or anything. It's fine, guys.
I will also be writing a new article this year that comes out on Saturdays. It's called the Tournament Takes and Leverage Points article, where I walk through the roster percentage report. So here are the quarterbacks, or here's the running backs, wide receivers, and tight ends that are projected to be rostered the most by the field. And here's how I'm attacking it. Now, we try to explain that roster percentages are kind of fluid. We're projecting, we're not going to get it perfect. And then on top of that, just because a player is popular doesn't make them a bad play in tournaments. Like, you can eat certain chalk as long as you get different elsewhere. So I'll be giving some of my roster percentage thoughts at each position, and then 5 ways to gain leverage on the field each week. So let's say that there's a very popular play. For instance, we talked about it week 1. There are going to be a lot of 49ers that are going to show up in lineups. Christian McCaffrey, Ricky Pearsall. Maybe it's George Kittle. I still need to look at the roster percentages. We're a little early. Or maybe it's, hey, Emeka Egbuka is going to be played a lot at this price point. Here are some other wide receivers that project similarly in the same spot and that could have a good outcome at the same price point that can be played at the same high roster percentage. So all of that, all of our picks, all of our content schedule is posted there in the DFS Pass. And I'll just say one more time before we jump into our main segment, Betz and I put in a lot of time, energy, and more importantly, like heart, thinking about you guys and thinking about your bankroll. I just put out an article about, contest selection, everything else. Regardless of where you're at, if you're listening to us, you're like, hey, I'm playing with $50. That's all I got. Or, hey, I'm playing with $1,000. We think that you're one of those people that can learn the game the right way, and you can walk with a bunch of people. So all of our content there in the DFS Pass, you can find dfspass.com. Lots of great people in Discord. I was even looking this morning, and man, people are just really, really kind to answer questions. Our buddy Chris Cash was in there, just answering questions. I mean, a lot of good people.
Dude, Chris never logs off. That guy's an animal. He's gonna have your guys back this year for sure. So it's gonna be great. And real quick, Kyle, just to let everybody know, we are in the process on the back end. The smart people on our staff, not Kyle and I. We just talk about football.
No way, definitely not me.
I don't know what I'm doing. We are in the process of turning over the site to kind of get it to like in-season mode. If it's not up when you're listening to this, it will be up. Just give us a day or so. Everything will get changed over. It'll be up there very soon. But we've already gotten, or at least I've gotten, a ton of message like, where's the DFS Pass? When is it ready? Like, remember, we're on East Coast time. Those guys are on West Coast time. So it just takes a little time. So by the time this shows up, hopefully that is the case. If not, it will be very, very soon.
Yeah, and last little note I'll give is our Friday show will cover the main slate in totality. I am not going to be looking at all at roster percentages for that slate until Thursday. So give a little bit of time. We're focusing this episode solely on the Thursday night game because it is the first one of the year, and it's great. But I try to wait to turn the page, and I would just say roster percentages for me in the optimizer don't really start getting too precise until Friday or Saturday. That's when Betz and I really start to hone in on those things. So give it some time. We really appreciate you guys a lot. But let's dive into this game.
Thursday Night Breakdown.
You know, you and I don't get to do Showdown podcasts. For some people are like, why don't you do one for every single game? It's like, man, it's really, really fun, but to dive really deep into one game every single week, it doesn't hit as many people. But for the first game, we want to introduce Showdown strategy, introduce you to our level of thinking. And then as we move throughout the season, we will have little special events where Betz and I might hop on Discord and say, hey, we really like this game. I am going to a Monday night game, Falcons and Bills, and you know that place is going to be rocking. You know the Falcons are going to be undefeated going into that game against Josh Allen. So we'll talk up that game.
Week 5?
I believe week 6.
Okay.
I could be wrong.
Either way, I mean, what a bad night to be Josh Allen. Are you kidding me? Trying to walk into the Benz and leave with a W? Good luck, brother.
Yeah, me and my friend, we're bringing our wives to that game, and Emma goes, ooh, now who are they playing again? Like, she didn't really care, but high roller here, we have a suite because one of our friends got tickets from his work. So the girls like that.
Yeah, that's why they're going.
That's exactly why they're going.
I mean, I can't blame them. That's going to be a great night. I'm excited for you.
Yeah. No, we'll definitely do okay. We never, underperform or anything like that. So, man, football is exciting. Let's talk Showdown strategy first, and then we'll break down the game. Once again, Betz has a whole article on the website if you want to walk through this game. But you and I spent a couple of episodes talking about strategy and how you approach DFS, how you approach cash, and how you approach GPPs. Betz and I will not be talking anything about cash here. We do not play very much cash at all when it comes to Showdown. So a lot of the stuff that we talked about, hey, just play the right plays and let the field make the mistake. That is kind of like thrown out the window to a degree here. So from a high level standpoint, how do we first get people on the right track of like how we think about Showdown games, island games, as opposed to all the other types of formats?
Yeah, obviously when we have one game to pick from in this slate, on the main slate, usually there's 12. On the smaller slates, even there's 10, 8, whatever it is. This is one game. And when you're looking at that, obviously that means the player pool is very small. Because of that, you will see roster percentage on every player. I mean, every player is getting played, right, in some capacity, just because you're trying to build these lineups that have, 6 players in some unique type of fashion. And generally speaking, when we think about that, we're trying to, I think, optimize correlation in your lineup. Try to tell a story, right? If this, then that. If, I'm just kind of shooting from the hip here, if A.J. Brown has the optimal captain performance Thursday night, if he goes out for 8, 120, and 2, there's a pretty good chance Devonta Smith is not in that lineup, right? Like, if this, then that is kind of how you have to think about a lot of these things. So we try to make sure that you're preaching correlation with your lineup, try to tell a story, and make sure it matches certain game flows. The nice thing about Showdown is that there's so much variance. I try to actually lean into a little bit more 20 max sets. Even for the Super Bowl, I did a 150 set where it's like, it kind of forces you to get onto like different, weird, unique builds that in your mind's eye, like you can't really like think about the game going this way, but it gets you unique access to different lineups and different players. Whereas, in cash games, like Kyle said, for the main slate, it's very simple. Like, just play the best plays, play the highly projected lineups, and generally speaking, over time, you'll be profitable. In these sort of settings, to get to the top of the leaderboard, especially if you're playing large field lottos, you need some weird stuff to happen that you didn't see coming. So, long-winded way of saying, make sure your lineup tells a story, and don't be afraid to get off the board.
Yeah, we will break down the game, but there's a section where I last year gave my hand on the dirt take, talking about different coverage matchups and stuff like that. And I literally wrote to it this year, and right next to it, I go, I don't know if this matters sometimes. I'm picking a narrative, I'm picking a game flow, and I'm running with it in that direction. So a couple years ago, some of you guys might remember on the main show, Andy won the Millie Maker, or split the Millie Maker, from the Thursday night game. And he was building his lineup and was about to leave the office. And Jason was kind of helping him. They were just, throwing some stuff in the Millie Maker for fun. And what Jason noticed is that he had built the lineup, Andy, without Christian McCaffrey, at the time was a Panther. And he's like, hey, since you don't have McCaffrey in this lineup, you're essentially saying he's not essential. What are you saying he's going to get hurt? Whatever. Have you thought about Chuba Hubbard? Which is, at the time now, it's funny thinking about who Chuba is. And so he threw in Chuba at the last minute because of the story that his lineup had given. And he, no big deal, split the Millie Maker. He also gave away most of the winnings.
Yeah. What a fun. That was like one of the most fun DFS moments for all of us, just to live vicariously through Andy. But like you're saying, yeah, your lineup should tell a story. I mean, wild things happen in one game slates, whether it be injury or just bad performance that you all thought he was going to smash. He didn't smash. You didn't need him. And the other thing about that is like, if we look at this slate, which we'll talk about specifics here in a few minutes, like Saquon's the highest priced player on the slate for good reason. It's an unbelievable matchup. He's a top 3 pick in fantasy drafts. He's the dude. But also you need to ask yourself at these different price points, what will you need from certain players if the rest of your lineup performs a certain way? Like if the mid-tier fails in the slate, we'll talk about some of those guys, Goddard, the kickers, Ferguson, and what you just needed was like a couple of studs at the top and then just punt plays everywhere else. You probably don't need an insane performance from Saquon. If the mid-tier plays are awesome and they smash, even a good Saquon game at that price point might not be optimal. So you just need to also think about that too from a pricing standpoint, because obviously we would all love to play Jalen Hurts and Saquon Barkley and CeeDee Lamb and Dak on the slate. At some point, you need to make those tough decisions if you're playing single entry or 3-max. So make sure you're thinking about too, like what the opportunity cost is for each player.
Yeah, like last year in the Super Bowl, your call was we're fading Saquon, at least at his salary. And that was able to give you some leverage over the field when you look at that. So let's take a quick break and we'll be right back.
Labor Day savings are happening right now at the Home Depot. So what are you working on? Prep for fall with our wide selection of cordless power tools that make it easy to clear your lawn starting at $79. And once the leaves are clear, keep your yard looking fresh with colorful mums that bloom all season long. Shop Labor Day savings now through September 3rd only at the Home Depot. See select stores for details.
I'm not switching my team to some fancy work platform that somehow knows exactly how we work. And its AI features are literally saving us hours every day. We're big fans. And just like that, teams all around the world are falling for Monday.com. With intuitive design, seamless AI capabilities, and custom workflows, it's the work platform your team will instantly click with. Head to Monday.com, the first work platform you'll love to use.
So if you are new to Showdown or single games, on DraftKings, it is a 1.5 multiplier for your captain. That's also their points and their salary. And FanDuel recently made an adjustment in the last couple of years to basically have their Showdown games be the exact same. They moved it from only 5 to 6, or from only 5 to now 6 in the lineup. So if you're playing on FanDuel, I would say 95% of what we're saying is going to apply. Some of the salaries might be different. For instance, Saquon and Hurts are very different, where Hurts on FanDuel is like an elite play. It's like really hard to get away from Hurts on FanDuel. When we get to DraftKings, it's a little bit different. But anyway, at the end of the day, we are trying to figure out a combination of 6 players. And at captain, there's an opportunity cost of saying, I'm paying a little bit more, and I'm hoping this player outdistances himself from the field. So we'll get through some of those numbers of how you pick your captain. But at the end of the day, I just want to remind people that there is so much more volatility than we realize. Like, we're projecting over an entire season when we talk best ball, right? trying to say like, okay, here's what I think this team is going to do. Then you start going in an individual game, and there are just going to be some wild outcomes that you did not foresee happening. And so just build that in. Just understand, like, we are not saying, is this team going to be good, or is this player going to be good over the course of the season? I was looking at these stats earlier of week 1 players last year and what they did and how we all overreact. Do you know Terry McLaurin scored 4 points in week 1?
Then we wanted to have a career season.
Yes. Oh, in a home league, Terry McLaurin was dropped, I think, a couple weeks in because he was so bad, and someone's like, I can't do this anymore. Now, obviously, that's kind of a little extreme, but same thing, like Amon-Ra, Drake London was really bad in week 1. And so you can kind of overreact. I'm just throwing out all that stuff. I'm not saying, what do I think Saquon's going to be for the year? What do I think Dak's going to be for the year? Was George Pickens a really good pick in best ball? That doesn't matter to me anymore. I'm looking at just one game, and I'm trying to figure out how to correlate my lineup based on the game total. So this one's at 47.5, and we'll break down the game. But any initial takes of just like how I look at this as a game as opposed to this is what I think about these teams in my hand of the dirt takes.
Yeah, I think the way you put it there from like a DFS game perspective is so important on this slate because my preconceived notion, and I think a lot of people feel the same, is like Eagles at home as now an 8.5 point favorite. The spread is moving in their direction. You know, no Micah Parsons. We've talked about it all offseason with best ball. Like the Cowboys defense is probably going to be terrible. Therefore, Dak is going to have to throw. Saquon, yes, we're concerned about maybe some cumulative workload over the course of the entire season, but he's fresh in week 1, and this is an eruption spot. So I think the general consensus build from like a football take is like Eagles handle their business at home, therefore Saquon in a positive game script, and then on the other side, Cowboys have to pass. That's, I think, the general game script you're going to see in a lot of builds for this slate. So that's kind of one thing to be mindful of. Not saying that that's wrong, just that's, I think, what the public perception is on this. So then you ask yourself, okay, how can I get different? And you can use roster percentages to help you do that. You can also use roster construction to help you do that with certain builds. I think you'll see a lot of probably 4-2 Eagles, a lot of 3-3 builds, 3 Cowboys, 3 Eagles. So there's contrarian nature to go about that to get like a 5-1 Philly, a 4-2 Dallas. There's different ways that you can get different from a game theory perspective, but I think just going into the slate, that's my general like top level view is like, oh, that's probably how the game will go. The thing is, I think a lot of people feel that way too. So that's one thing to consider.
Yeah, 4-2 Dallas is my early favorite build of saying, I think the Eagles take care of business. It's condensed on their team, and yet Dallas has the firepower and hopefully the volume on the passing side that one of their receivers can get there and captain. And then you are, stacking them with Dak and a couple other cheaper pieces. Like, there's a couple of Dallas pieces when we get into them, like, man, Jamonte's cheap. Turd Ferguson feels like a safe play, but also like it wouldn't shock me for him to get a red zone touchdown. So we'll talk about all that. First thing is captains. And how do you pick your captain? I want us to get the context, though, because, the salaries are pretty high, but this year they're actually too cheap. So I went back the last 2 years, and I compared them to what the salaries are at captain this year. In 2023, Mahomes in week 1 for this game was the highest priced player, and he was at over $18,000, $18,300. Lamar last year was the most expensive captain, and he was at $17,100. This year it's Saquon at $16,800, and then Hurts at $16,500, Lamb at $16,200. Like, already we're getting a discount, and we kind of saw that with the week 1 main slate. DraftKings is kind of giving us a gift that we can have more interesting builds because we can fit more salary in.
Yeah, and I would say like pricing is kind of loose. It's not like you can do literally anything you want, but like you said, relative to previous seasons, like top captain salary is cheaper than what it has been, and you can therefore do some fun things. The tricky thing is like, from Pickens up. So Pickens, Devonta Smith, Dak Prescott, AJ Brown to join those 3 studs at the top. Obviously, that's where all the projected points are going to come from. The problem is you can't fit all those guys. So you are going to have to make some tough decisions down on the lower end. And the tricky thing when I was doing research for the slate was that I don't see a ton of like really good punt plays. And when I mean punt plays, I mean like below 3,000. Sure, there's a couple that you could talk yourself into, but there's none that stick out. Sometimes on a showdown slate, there's one that you're like, wow, I can't believe we're getting this gift and he's highly rostered. On this slate, I don't really see that. So I do think even though it is pretty loose from a pricing perspective, it's not that you can do whatever you want. You still are going to have to make some tough decisions.
Yeah, the value plays, if you really want to go down that route, they just don't end up having the ceiling you want at captain. And it's obvious, like pricing correlates with fantasy points, and there's a reason they're priced up that way. It's not rocket science. Same way with ADP. Like we're going to have in best ball Bijan or Justin Jefferson, all these guys at the top because they're the ones that score the most points. So those top 7 names that you listed are the dudes, and will probably be the dudes at captain that you really want to go there. Now, looking over the last 5 years, the field is pretty good at identifying who the right captains are in like a gross sense. Like, okay, we're probably not going to roster the kickers because, it's not going to be optimal. So at the end of the day, the field, if I had to pick the positions, they kind of overvalue quarterbacks slightly at captain because they're usually priced up and we know that we want a quarterback somewhere in there. And we slightly undervalue running backs. Now, part of that is last year running backs did crush as a whole, league-wide, that we kind of undervalued them, and now you're seeing the pendulum swing back in that direction. But overall, I would say that we don't have to get that different at captain. We're not trying to search for, Luke Schoonmaker or Will Shipley because Saquon got injured and we're predicting that. We're not trying to do that.
Yeah, generally speaking, like you said, the top guys are the top guys, and historical showdown data, even though there are weird slates here and there on the bigger sample size, generally speaking, the top optimal captains usually are these guys that have the access to giving you a 20, 25, 30-point DraftKings ceiling. These guys that are priced, below 6K just simply almost never do that. And a lot of times when you're getting that 1.5 multiplier, finding that guy that has access to the ceiling is so, so important. So you'll see lineups recommended, or you'll see people floating out ideas in Discord or stuff or whatever. It's like, well, if I just spend really cheap at captain, I play, like you said, Shipley or whoever else you want to throw in there, I can just spend up and get all these flex studs. What about that? But the problem is when you sacrifice that 1.5 multiplier, generally speaking, on a bigger sample size, that's going to be a losing strategy more often than not, is the data that we have. So yeah, it's not tricky. It's not sneaky. It's like, these are the captains we're interested in. And you'll see that in my article almost every single time. The top 3 or 4 I recommend are in the top of the pricing tier. And it's because these are the best plays on the slate. These are the guys that can actually give you a huge night. The guys down below, not so much.
That strategy is what's called the Jason Moore fish strategy.
He loves that.
Jason used to build that way. And I was like, hey, you know what? It's showdown. Anything can happen. And his lineup looked really cool because he'd have a cheap captain and all these studs. Just doesn't always work out. Over the last 5 years, so give me some more numbers with this, 95% of captain selections in the top 1%. So meaning these are the ones that won the tournaments. We're not by kicker or defense. So most of the time, Betz and I are just going to say, if they beat me, they beat me. There are a couple of times for defense where you and I are going to go, okay, I can see it in this low total if this happens, this defense being a captain. But wide receivers lead the way. 33% of the time, they are what is optimal. And because we're on DraftKings, you have full PPR. You also have the 100-yard bonus. You can outdistance yourself from the field if you get a wide receiver in your captain spot. But a lot of times we're just looking at who's favored. Favored teams end up at captain almost 2/3 of the time. So based on that data alone, what we love doing is find the wide receiver on the favorited team. And often, if you want to get leverage, you can find the wide receiver too, who's kind of being undervalued. So for instance, in this scenario, Devonta Smith feels like an undervalued captain based on pricing and based just on sentiment of people saying, hey, you know what? He's good, but he's never really having these outlier games the way that A.J. Brown does. Those are just simple ways to start to whittle down your captain, selection. And I wanted to ask you, it's not an exact process, but how do you whittle down who you're attacking with? Now, obviously, if you're playing a 150 set and you're max entering a tournament and you're an opto bro like Betz is now, then you can just do whatever you want. Just play, a bunch of different captains. But if you're doing a 3 max or let's say a 20 max, how are you whittling down who your captains are?
The best part about doing the 150s is you don't know what you're rooting for until like the third quarter. Like you just like, I have every player in this game at some capacity. So whatever happens in the first half happens. And like,
yay football.
It kind of, yeah, go football. Go teams trying really hard. Then you kind of get clarity like late in the game, like, okay, here's what I need. But yeah, for smaller field type stuff, generally speaking, I'm trying to look at the roster percentages in captain in particular and trying to decide, do I want, like, how likely do I think that is? Am I with the field? Do I think that's pretty sharp? Do I have a different take that I think that's way wrong and I want to come in double that or, triple that or whatever? Or in single entry, just completely fade that and say that's not how this game's going to go and get really, really different. Each slate is obviously unique, and so there's not going to be a blanket answer to that. But like, going back to, like you said, the Super Bowl slate in particular, I was way, way overweight Hurts captain, Worthy captain, and AJ Brown captain. Obviously, some of those didn't really work out, but the Worthy one did. And just being underweight Saquon captain because this is the biggest game of the year. Everybody's watching this game. We all just saw what Saquon did for 4 months in a row. Could have set the title or set the record. He's going to be the first click in for a lot of people. And on this slate, I think he's going to be the first click in for a lot of people. I think if you're using an optimizer, you might get more Hurts at captain. I'm not sure exactly on that, but Saquon is going to be either 1 or number 2 in roster percentage at captain. I'm not saying I'm fading that or that's wrong, but just kind of in general, like that's kind of what I'm going into this mindset with, that's what the field's going to do. How likely is that to happen versus not? That's the question you got to ask yourself.
Yeah, I think it's kind of identifying a couple of players that you're saying, hey, this is what our roster percentages say, and I feel like I can take advantage of this player in the sense of, I think they're not being rostered enough. Could they be wrong? Sure. But like Devonta Smith is one that, based on the data of favorited teams and wide receiver in the captain spot, he should be somebody that's rostered a ton by the field, and yet he's probably going to come in a little bit lower. We're way too early for me to figure out exactly what it is, but I bet he's going to be definitely under 10%, but 6, 7?
Yeah, probably somewhere in that range.
That's too low for somebody that we know has the upside to go for 100 and a touchdown.
And I think, too, just to your point on some of the historical data
I also love him.
Also, that matters. I think also looking at this historical data, like you just mentioned, with wide receivers on favored teams finding their way into the optimal more often than you realize, it sounds counterintuitive because you would say, oh, this team is favored. Maybe they just are running the ball a ton, and that's the captain optimally. But also remember, like, you can throw to get out to a lead and have a huge ceiling performance that way as well. So just wanted to point that out for people. It sounds counterintuitive, but I mean, this is a one-game slate and weird stuff happens, and it's definitely possible that one of these wide receivers ends up there.
All right, so beyond just choosing your captain, you got to go position by position, and 90% of the time, you need a quarterback somewhere in your lineup. I mean, you can even bump that up to 95% in my mind, where it's either captain or flex. If you're rostering a wide receiver in the captain spot, you're essentially saying he needs to get there, and the quarterback is likely going to be stacked with him. So in this one, if I'm rostering CD or George Pickens, I'm saying that Dak's going to throw the ball a ton. You and I have been very, very big on Dak all offseason. But we want to usually choose the quarterback from the favored team. Over the last 25 years, the favored team wins 2/3 of the time already, just from a football perspective. And if that line gets up to 8, 9, 10, it's approaching 80% of the time. So that's what's interesting about this game, is that the quarterback from the favored team who is at an 8.5 line says that Jalen Hurts is going to show up. And that's why in optimals, you said like he's going to show up almost everywhere. And when you get the type of rushing production, like Jalen Hurts is really hard to get away from in this slate. I can tell myself a story where he's not as valuable. And in that story, it's a Saquon game. It's maybe lower scoring and maybe Dak's the quarterback you need. But at the end of the day, like if I have a quarterback who has massive rushing upside that's favored by over 8.5 points, it's really hard to get away from those types of people in your lineup.
For sure. And even if it's not a captain, just like the raw points from quarterbacks in Showdown, historically speaking, are what you need. Remember, if you're playing the Millie on a Sunday main slate, you need every single player to have one of the best games of their career, maybe, or even in the season. On Showdown, you don't need that 80th, 90th, 95th percentile outcome. Even if, let's say, Jalen Hurts has a quote-unquote bad game from his standards from fantasy, which we're used to, even if he gives you 18, 19 points, it's a pretty good chance he's probably in the flex. Maybe not captain, but at least in flex. Same thing for Dak, right? Like, even if he doesn't throw for 300 and 3 touchdowns, I don't know, 16 points from Dak, it's probably in the optimal, right? Depending on what the rest of the players do. So you don't need to think about, or I should say you should think about what your players need to do also from a floor perspective, not just ceiling. We always talk about ceiling in DFS. In Showdown, avoiding zeros and avoiding these low scores, generally speaking, goes a long way. And these quarterbacks really help you along the way quite a bit. Not saying every slate you should have 2 in your lineup, but definitely at least 1. And if you're not having 1 in there, outside of a weird, it's week 14 and we have backup quarterbacks in there and the game total is like 33.5 points. Outside of those weird scenarios, I am setting a rule for sure. I'm having at least 1 quarterback somewhere in my lineup every single time.
At running back, they're usually rostered lower, and I use an asterisk there because Saquon's in this game, so it's going to be different. But it creates the type of leverage you want against those quarterback and wide receiver stacks. And in this game, we have an issue of asking the question, who is the running back I need for Dallas? And maybe the answer is nobody. Like, you could go down the road of saying, oh, well, I think it's Jaden Blue because he has the pass catching profile. He's not free, people. Like, $5K is pretty expensive for a rookie 5th round draft pick. Miles Sanders is also not cheap either. And then Javonte Williams, who projects to be the lead back, is priced in with like defense and kicker. And yet he's been one of the most inefficient backs that we know. But I kind of like that in this situation that there are 2 to 3 guys here for Dallas that will spread out the roster percentages and allow you to figure out, like, do I need these guys? Because you can get leverage with Dallas. Because my sentiment is stay away from these dudes. I did in best ball. I'm just going to go through the passing game. But one of those guys scores a touchdown, they're going to pay off.
For sure. And kind of like what I was saying with some of these single game slates where you don't need these huge outcomes, like 10 points from one of these guys might be enough, especially at this salary. So yeah, the Dallas backfield is one that I don't know, man. I really don't. I don't think anybody truly does. So we talked about this on the main slate. Entering week 1, there's a lot of fragility in projection systems. The Dallas backfield projections that you're going to see out there, whether it's from us or other providers in the space, there's a lot of fragility. Nobody really knows what the playing time is going to be, what the usage is going to be. My best guess is it's probably Javonte leading the backfield because Jaden Blue missed a pretty decent chunk of time with his heel and ankle injuries. He is off the injury report, so he's going to play, but it's a rookie and he missed a ton of camp. And Javonte is the only running back that sat with starters all 3 preseason games. So you could tell yourself a story where Javonte leads the backfield, but doesn't mean Sanders doesn't fall into the end zone randomly and end up in the optimal, or Jaden Blue catches a couple of passes or what have you. So yeah, I think if you're running 150, you should probably have access to all 3 of these guys just across the portfolio. But they all feel like gross plays, which means in tournaments, they're probably pretty good plays.
How many times are you going to hear people say, like, Miles Sanders revenge game, this could work?
I think people just forgot about those days, man. People are so done with Sanders. I feel bad for him that people just don't even like associate him with like the good Eagles teams of the last 5 years. It's almost like he didn't even happen, yet he was great that one year.
All right, let's move to wide receiver because it is the position that gives us the widest range of outcomes. We look at certain players like George Pickens and go like, that dude can go for 200 yards because I've seen him in a game do that type of stuff. I also could see him airball and go 4 for 40, and you're like, hey, why did I pay this salary for this player? This game and specifically is tough because there are 4 wide receivers that are very, very clear, and it condenses the target share. You know, normally we'd be like, okay, well, there's a wide receiver 3 that could see, I don't know, 12% of the targets, 15% maybe. Not here. It's these 4 dudes that we're going to be paying for. And we know that in Showdown, wide receiver 1s, they may average, their projection is going to look different than the quarterbacks, yet their roster percentage keeps them in a spot where they can be difference makers. That's why I love Showdown and rostering wide receivers, because the field sometimes goes, I know I need a quarterback. I look at the projection and say, oh, well, Dak or Jalen Hurts is just going to be so much better. I need to stick to them in the lineup. I want the volatility. I want the fragility with these players. So rostering a wide receiver at captain, it's a good strategy. You know you should be doing it with your quarterback. I think the harder part is saying, let's say I have one of these wide receivers at captain. What do I do with the rest of the team? Let's say I'm starting with CeeDee Lamb at captain and then Dak. how many other Cowboys should I have in my lineup? How should I attack that? So in general, the good rule of thumb is you want to kind of max it out at one teammate, pass catcher in the flex. So CeeDee Lamb, Dak in the flex, and then you're saying, what's one other Cowboy that I'm going to have? You're not trying to load it up for the most part and say, I'm going to have CeeDee, Pickens, Ferguson, and go that route.
Yeah, and I think about kind of the profiles that generally find their way into captain for me on these slates. It is these like true alphas that can give you the DraftKings scoring that is just, breaks the slate, like 9 catches, 120 yards, and a touchdown because of the bonus, the full PPR, those sort of things. These alpha wide receivers that can give you insane volume. When you think about it, that means that it's taking away opportunities and production from their teammates. So especially at salary, which you consider, for example, a CeeDee Lamb, he's very expensive. If he is the optimal captain and you put Dak with him in the flex, there's a pretty good chance in order for that scenario to happen, for that to be optimal, that George Pickens is probably not also having an incredible game. It's not impossible. It's just unlikely. So in those scenarios, for me, like you said, generally it's a max one other pass catcher when I have that alpha wide receiver at captain. Same goes for A.J. Brown. If he's having an incredible game, probably means Devontae Smith is not having the best game of his career. So you're going to want to think about that negative correlation, so to speak. And again, that goes back to telling yourself a story. If this, then that.
In terms of tight ends in general, the field's pretty spot on that it's about 9-10% of the time that they are the optimal captain. You need to tell yourself a story where this player sees enough volume and it hinders the rest of the pass catchers on the team. So could Dallas Goedert and could Jake Ferguson be that guy? Yeah, like they could. I feel like when Goddard has had his moments, it's been Smith out. Or when Smith's had his moment, Goddard's been out. That's kind of been the narrative over the last couple of years. In this slate, I'm not really adding those guys to it. There are individual slates where it's somebody like Kittle or Kelsey historically that can be that guy. But on this slate, I'm not working with those. And we mentioned the top 7 guys. Like I'm not trying to get a Dallas Cowboy running back. I'm not getting the tight ends. I'm not getting the defense. I'm basically just working with quarterback and wide receiver.
I think I'm with you for the most part.
Okay, a couple other points before we preview the game. The game total usually gets pretty efficient as we get closer to it. Early in the week, people create a narrative of what will happen. So right now with this game, it's been bet to a place where it's like, okay, we see the team implied total for the Eagles and go, okay, well, it's at 28 points. If they're going to score 28 points, here's what's going to happen. Here's how they're going to roll. 8.5 still feels like a big line. So right now, like if I'm going to give my Vegas take, I would take Dallas plus 8.5. I don't know if you feel that way.
Kyle, how dare you? I have no comment on that.
You do. You hate the line, don't you?
I think it's a really good line, unfortunately. And there's a reason books are leaving it there, right? Like I can't remember the other game off the top of my head, but if you bet teasers, 6 points, there's a reason books are letting this line hang out there. 8 is a key number, 8.5. You can tease it down to 2.5. Like they kind of want you to put a ton on the Eagles. I'm sure Eagles money line and parlays is, through the roof. Like the books are rooting for the Cowboys in this game. So I think the Eagles probably win and roll here, but backdoor cover also is possible. So yes, there's a reason the line is where it is. If it looks too good to be true, generally speaking, it is.
Yeah, imagine taking the Eagles in your survivor pool. Am I right?
Oh, they're going to be the most popular play on the slate for week 1. By the way, Kyle and I are planning to do a survivor pool together. Hopefully we get to talk about that the entire season instead of just 1 week. But we got to come up with our week 1 survivor and update you guys each week. So we'll see. We're not taking the Eagles.
Yeah, okay, good. I'm in an industry contest too for that. And you get to pick 3, like you have 3 entries in it. So the Eagles were one of mine.
Kyle. Using the Super Bowl champs in week 1 on an island game.
It's just straight up wins, not the line.
Oh, Kyle. We're going to have to talk off air.
I'll say this about spreads because the higher the spread, you're taking the favorite. Your captain's going to be there. It's fine. When the spread is short, let's say it's at 3, 2.5, I'm going to be taking the underdog because the field looks at that and go, oh, they're favorited by 2.5. It's like, I don't care about 2.5. I'm going to take a captain from the underdog team to create leverage because in general, they're rostered a little bit lower. The last thing I'll say before we preview the game, just beyond just getting unique with your roster construction, like you can leave salary on the table. That's something we talked about a lot. But at the end of the day, when you get closer and closer to that 50K, your lineups will be duplicated. And so it's important to kind of understand that you can leave some on the table because you get some really unique roster construction. So like there's some weird players on this slate. If you wanted to play Kylan Granson at $200, who plays for the Eagles, by the way, you can do that. There's also a player that I needed to mention his name because it's really, really fun, and I just found out he existed. There's a Dallas tight end at $200 named Rivaldo Fairweather.
That's really fun to say, actually.
Rivaldo,
that's fun to say.
But yeah, leaving salary on the table is totally fine.
Yep, for sure. And actually kind of recommended, especially in large field lottos where, like you said, you're going to get duplicated so much the more that you spend. And the reason that's important is because it's hard to win these contests. It's really hard to vault to the top of the leaderboard. When that happens, you want to be able to say that you're not holding hands with 100 other people and splitting the prize pool at the top. Not saying I wouldn't love to do that, obviously, like the Million Maker or anything, but just thinking about how can you maximize your ROI in terms of these contests. Trying to limit the number of dupes is very, very important.
I just spent about 20 seconds reading up on Rivaldo Fairweather.
Any fun facts for the people?
His birthday's close to mine in July, 6'3", from FIU in Auburn.
Okay.
Transfer. So, got the SEC experience.
Oh, yeah, definitely.
That's what you can say.
Definitely.
So, take that whatever you want. All right, let's take a break, and then we're going straight into this game.
Labor Day savings are happening right now at the Home Depot. So what are you working on? Prep for fall with our wide selection of cordless power tools that make it easy to clear your lawn starting at $79. And once the leaves are clear, keep your yard looking fresh with colorful mums that bloom all season long. Shop Labor Day savings now through September 3rd only at the Home Depot. See select stores for details.
This episode is brought to you by Disney+, Hulu, and ESPN. Now you can get all of ESPN in the new ESPN app, along with Disney+ and Hulu with a limited-time offer. The biggest sports, movies, and shows in one bundle, all for just $29.99 a month for 12 months. Visit Disney+ Hulu ESPNBundle.com for details. Ad-supported plan auto-renews at regular price, currently $35.99 per month unless canceled. Ends January 5th, 2026. Terms apply.
The line for this Thursday night game is at 47.5. Eagles minus 8.5. That gives a team implied total for the Eagles of 28 and the Cowboys at 19.5. If you are one of those people that look at last year's statistics, it's pretty one-sided about which team was more efficient offensively, which defense was clearly way better. And then we now look at a defense like the Cowboys that obviously has maybe gotten a little worse, but they weren't great last year. So initial takes about this game flow, and then we'll go into, certain plays at certain price points.
Yeah, I mean, it seems very obvious and kind of how the simplistic way of thinking about this game
so obvious, man,
is going to be.
We don't even have to say it.
No, you're thinking it. I'm thinking it. Kyle's thinking it. The way we all approach this game and that we all think, right? Oh, the Cowboys just traded away Micah Parsons. Their defense was the worst in the league last year, or one of the worst in the league. And historically, without Micah Parsons, on an EPA per play basis, that is the worst in the league. So you have the defensive concerns. We talked all best ball season about how the Cowboys are just going to chuck it all over the yard because they don't really have a running game. And so therefore, you say Dak in a negative game script. They're going to throw, and the Eagles are going to do what they did last year, and they're going to feed Saquon in the second half in a positive game script. Here comes another 20 touches. Of course, he's going to be in the optimal. That's the general top-level view that I think a lot of people have. Now, if you do look at statistics from last year and just kind of the general way these teams are trending, I can't really argue with it, if I'm being totally honest, because the Cowboys were bottom 4 in every advanced rushing metric you can think of last year. They were tied for dead last in rushing touchdowns allowed last year. So it all points you to Saquon, right? All this stuff points you to Saquon in a positive game script. Again, I'm not saying that's wrong, but just generally, you need to know that that's what the field is going to be doing and how they're going to build. So how can we get unique around that, or how are there different contrarian game scripts that we can build around is kind of what I'm thinking through.
Yeah, it's really hard to get away from Saquon in the match if you're just looking at matchups.
Yeah.
The theory portion would say I'm going to be underweight at captain because of how the field is going to treat him. I'm going to look at him as a really, high-end priority flex because of the way that the game script's going to work. And then I'm telling myself a story where Dallas has to come back. Like, the Eagles are the worst in terms of second half milking the clock, and worse in the sense of like, it's not fun for us. It's not fun for us to not have fantasy points in the games that we play in the second half. Their pass rate over expectation was already dead last in the league. And then you get to the second half and you go, the games are just erased. The overall play volume is just gone because they can milk the clock. So based on that type of first game script, I would be building through a CeeDee Lamb, captain, Dak, flex. Saquon can play also in your flex, and you're still able to figure out the salary because it's not as expensive as it should be to add in a couple other Dallas pieces. So if it's a Jake Ferguson and you're adding in somebody else, like it's very possible to start with Saquon and yet not start with him as captain.
Yeah, definitely. And I also think Saquon captain teams, because of the mindset of like, oh, Eagles are going to roll at home, I think you'll see a decent amount of Saquon captain, Eagles defense and flex. And again, I'm not saying I won't have any of that, but just that combination I think will be popular. So just something to consider. But I do like the way that you kind of put that where, if that is the game script you think is going to happen, then doesn't it make just as much sense to put CeeDee Lamb at captain for leverage? He's probably my favorite roster percentage adjusted captain play on the slate, because it's not like he will be, unowned, or like we're not sneaking this by anybody, but relative to Saquon and Jalen Hurts, who I think in some contests could push 20% captain each, I think you could see CD down at like 15, 12, 10, depending on your contest. And that to me feels like an automatic leverage spot where it's just like, hey, if you really think Dallas is going to chuck it this much, and if you do want to put your hand in the dirt here and kind of have that take, like he's going to move around all over the formation, right? In the slot, out wide, in motion, all those things. Philly's defense historically has been weakest in the middle of the field. They are not going to have one of the starting linebackers. They lost a ton in free agency. Like they traded away CJ Gardner-Johnson. Like there's a lot of moving parts in the middle of the field for this Eagles defense. If you want to get your hand in the dirt and give a football take, I think it's an awesome spot for CeeDee Lamb to just pile up catches, 6, 7, 8 catches, 100 yards, hit the bonus. Maybe he scores and kind of is leveraged that way. So I do plan to be overweight captain CD relative to Saquon and Jalen Hurts.
Yeah, just to give you some numbers with that, Betz was talking about the middle of the field. Last year, the Eagles gave up the 7th highest target rate to the slot wide receivers last year. CeeDee's been 50% or above. He's kind of been the guy there. And when he's targeted there, he's targeted even more frequently than he is outside. I guess at the end of the day, like if we like the Dallas passing attack from a volume standpoint, who are the other guys, that you are interested in? Because Pickens isn't free, and Pickens feels like a type of guy that is an all or nothing play. Historically, like that's what we've kind of seen him as. So if it's not a Pickens play, who are the other guys you're interested in? I mean, it's Jonathan Mingo, I'm assuming.
Dude, don't kick a man when he's down. He's on IR. Come on. You
Kyle. Could play him. Come on, 1,200.
Rest up, Jonathan. Turd Ferg sticks out like a sore thumb. Jake Ferguson. He's 5,400. I do fear that price tag is going to come with a lot of roster percentage, so I'm trying to be mindful of that. But just when you're thinking about, like you said, like these teams don't really have a true number 3 wide receiver. They will have guys running routes out there. But from a target earning perspective, Jake Ferguson is essentially this team's wide receiver 3. He did have a 17% target share last year. The ADOT was 4.2 yards. So in theory, there's not a lot of ceiling here with Ferguson, but on a full PPR site, 4 to 5 catches is squarely in play in a negative game script, and that could be enough at this tag. So I have quite a bit of interest in Jake Ferguson. And then for large field, like contrarian type plays, I think Kevontae Turpin is super interesting at 2,800 as a punt. He's gotten a little bit of buzz as like a do-it-all guy in this offense in the offseason. You've seen him actually worked in the backfield a little bit too, taking some rush attempts. We saw him have that one random big game on I think it was a Thursday night last year, maybe it was a Sunday night game, but on an island game, he popped up for a big one here, and the peripherals were pretty strong. Again, small sample size from a routes run perspective, over 2 yards per route run, 10.9 yards per touch last season. So I think Turpin's got a little juice where you don't need a lot of volume for him to pay it off. One big play could help him get there. So I think if I'm, ranking these guys, like obviously it's CD and George at the top, Turd Ferg after that for me, and then I prefer Turpin to Jalen Tolbert.
Oh, Tolbert. He had a fun little run for us in the past in best ball. I know that you will be seeing people feeling sneaky, like they're double dipping with Turpin and Dallas defense. Like, I'm really hoping for this one outcome where he returns something. I get the touchdown and the other touchdown. Sure. Have fun. You can convince me of anything. But I think the interesting point is how Javonte Williams and Turd Ferguson are basically at the same price point. Javonte's at $5,400, Turd Ferguson's at $5,200. I have Ferg down on the value menu play of the week.
Oh.
I got 2 others. I'll give it to you later.
Okay.
Wendy's value menu. Those two at the same price point are interesting in how they might cannibalize each other's roster percentage points. I'm trying to figure out who the 4th Cowboy is in my 4-2 builds. CD at captain, Dak, Turd or Javonte. I probably won't be playing those together. It's like I'm trying to figure out who that person is together. And I think Turpin is fine as like a salary saver. Any takes on Brandon Aubrey, who is everybody's favorite home league kicker to take in their leagues, and then the Dallas defense at $3,600.
Yeah, the pricing I think is just wrong with relative to the other kickers on the slate. Just talking about comparing the two, Elliott and Brandon Aubrey. No NFL team has a higher implied total in week 1 than the Eagles. Yet Brandon Aubrey is priced up above Jake Elliott. And maybe you say, well, the Eagles defense holds him at the 35 on their drives and he's just kicking field goals. I don't know, man. Just like if the Eagles do match their team total or exceed it, there's a good chance Jake Elliott is part of that equation. So I think Elliott is one of my favorite. Not to steal your thing here, Kyle. One of my favorite value plays on the slate. I prefer him to Brandon Aubrey, even though like you said in home leagues and stuff like that, we all love Brandon Aubrey because he can hit these 65-yarders and stuff. But I think Elliott should have been priced more expensive. He is my favorite play if you're talking about the kickers and defenses. I do have interest in the Eagles defense for sure as part of 5-1 Eagles builds. But like I said, my fear is that because the spread is moving so much and because the narrative on the Cowboys, especially after Micah Parsons, is that this defense is going to be terrible. The Eagles are going to roll. My fear is that they get steamed a little bit. The Eagles defense does, but they will definitely make my player pool in these 5-1 builds.
I definitely have Jake Elliott down on the value menu.
Nice.
A kicker is going to be somebody that shows up in a lot of optimals and should when you have a team implied total hovering around 28. I mean, anything over 24, 25, like the kicker on the favored team should be somebody that you consider as a flex option.
Yep.
It's really good play. Aubrey is only interesting to me if you have a game script where this game hits the under. And you're saying, hey, it's a slog. He's optimal at 4,800. I'm not messing around with, some of these other options in the same range. Like, I think it can work, but he is overpriced for who he is. Let's go to the Eagles side. Hurts is at $11,000, and then he's probably going to come in. Like, would you say Hurts is going to come in as the most popular captain?
I think it'll be a coin flip between him and Saquon, but I think he'll definitely be the most rostered player in totality when you include flex and captain. It will definitely be Jalen Hurts.
It's just really hard to get away from somebody who you look at and say, they get attempts inside the 5. I get to build that in a projection, and they're favored by more than a touchdown. So Hurts, I cannot say anything bad about him. He's going to be rostered. In that build that we were just talking about, though, is that one of those instances where if we're taking CD and then we're going with Dak, how would you be playing Hurts there?
Yeah, that's tough because I need to like sit down and look at what you'd have salary-wise, but in that scenario, if you are going to do that and you do want to throw in another pass catcher from Dallas, all of a sudden your spots start to run up and your salary starts to get used up. So, I mean, don't get me wrong. There are scenarios where Hurts is not in the optimal. I plan to at least match the field. Like, I think he's a very good play. Like you said, home favorite with a ton of rushing touchdown equity. And also, I think he could spike here as a passer from an efficiency standpoint. I do share everybody else's concerns that we're not going to see 35 pass attempts from Jalen Hurts, but Over the last 3 years with the Eagles, he's averaged 7.7 YPA. All of his guys are healthy in this game. They're all playing. Like, I just find so many ways where Hurts has a very good chance of being at least in the flex. That said, in the small percentage that he's not, like you said, probably a Saquon game, right? Or just contrarian. We don't think this is going to happen, but the Cowboys pull off the upset, or a couple turnovers or what have you, and the Cowboys dominate play volume. Again, highly unlikely, but weird stuff happens in Showdown, so you do need to leave your mind open to those scenarios at least existing.
Yeah, just to give you a roster, like I'm playing around with an optimizer right now. It's like if you wanted to fit in a CD stack with Dak, and you're adding in Hurts, and you're like, oh man, but it's hard to get away from Saquon. Like you're left with such a low salary that you're basically gonna have to punt it off a bridge and find some $200 player, and then really like ask yourself the question, like, who is the $2,000 player that I want on my roster? And it gets pretty thin. Will Shipley is one of those guys that's interesting if you think he gets some good third down work that matters, or you say, hey, this team really, gets out ahead and they use Shipley in the fourth quarter. Like, you have to tell yourself that type of story. I do also include Shipley on the value menu at 2K.
So now we have
it's cheap.
It's Turd Ferg, Shipley, and Jake Elliott.
Those are the plays.
Those are the value plays. Wow, nice. I think Shipley's interesting because he's kind of filling, not to like copy and paste, but he's kind of filling the Kenny Gainwell role, so to speak, from last year, which in Showdown, when they were smashing teams, was actually decently valuable. Like, if he does get run in the fourth quarter, or just the running game is so efficient because the matchup is so good and he only needs like 6 touches and happens to one of them is a touchdown, that's probably optimal at 2K. So yeah, I do have a lot of interest in Will Shipley, and I honestly think you can play him with Saquon. It's kind of counterintuitive, but like you said, Kyle, in those game scripts where the Eagles roll and they are up 2 touchdowns in the fourth quarter, I think you'll see more Shipley than Saquon. So again, you don't want to like box yourself into certain game scripts or certain things the way that this has to goes, but I do think playing them together is optimal, or viable, I should say, even though I don't think it'll be optimal super, super often.
Can I interest you in any of the other punt plays or cheaper plays on the Eagles? Our boy Jahan Dotson, Penn State great at 3,200. Grant Calcaterra, backup tight end at 2,400. Kylan Granson, backup tight end at 200.
He might not even be active on game day, so just make sure you check that.
any of those, any interest?
I mean, Dotson, I think, will open the season as the team's wide receiver 3. He was, of course, all last year.
The kindest thing you could say.
I mean, the team did trade for John Mechie. That was like a week and a half ago. So I'd be surprised if they work Mechie in as the guy over Dotson. So Dotson, to me, if I'm playing someone else at wide receiver, it would be him for the Eagles. That said, you're probably your best case scenario. You're like hoping for 2 catches and you're hoping one of them is a touchdown. That said, in the Green Bay playoff game, he was in the optimal because he did catch touchdowns. So I don't think it'll happen very often, but if you're running a 150 set, he should definitely make your player pool.
I literally was about to say, I feel like Betz is about to say the nicest thing about him is, hey, if you're running a 150, you could probably include him in there.
Oh, man. I'm trying, man. I'm trying.
Yeah, I don't really have any firm takes. I have seen some people talking about Kylan Granson because he's $200, but same thing you're saying is like we got to make sure this dude's even playing. Now, it is possible for someone like that to give you a weird roster construction. He zeros, and you still are able to have that, but wait on it. You can wait on that information. He's definitely not going to be an essential player. But Dotson's probably my favorite of the dart throws. He is too expensive, though.
Yeah.
That's like the other thing. It's like, I wish you were like in the 2K range. Any last takes on the game?
Nothing on the game. I did want to throw out one last super nasty boy. I mean, the nastiest. You have it? Always. Kyle's always ready. Mid-season form. How do you say this guy's last name? Hunter, is it Lepke? Lupke. Sorry, Hunter. He is $400. And obviously there's a pretty good chance he's going to give you 0 points. But like you were saying, if what you needed is a few of the studs at top, just the salary savings alone could land him or somebody else in this range in the optimal. The reason I am pointing him out in particular is because there's been a lot of speculation from the beats that even though this is going to be a full-blown committee, like he will be part of the committee. So I don't know, 2 carries, 3 carries, a target or 2. Like if he catches 1 or 2 footballs at $400, 2 points, I'm not even joking, might be enough to land him in the optimal. So again, if you are running a 150, do not X him out, even though it is the nastiest play you can even think of, a fullback on a showdown slate. They had him a lot last year for like pass pro, so you could tell yourself a story that he's on the field and pass protection and gets 2 dump offs, and all of a sudden that's optimal. So yeah, just wanted to point that out there. He is the nastiest of the nasty boys on this slate.
Yeah, you can tell yourself a story at the goal line. He's there, and they sneak him out of the backfield. It works.
I can see it now.
It can work.
The link goes quiet as the Eagles get out to, or the Cowboys got to a 7-0 lead on the back of Hunter Lupke. I can see it.
But you're cheering because you didn't X him out.
That's right.
He was in your 150 set.
My 1% exposure.
That's going to do it for this episode. Like I mentioned, on Friday, we will be highlighting the DraftKings main slate. We also have everything for FanDuel on our site. So if you're one of those people you're listening like, hey, what about FanDuel? FanDuel cash picks, FanDuel GPP picks. Also in our Discord, we have all of that in there and in the optimizer. So make sure you check out everything, dfspass.com. Betz, tell us goodbye.
Yes, sir. It's good to be back, man. Got a real football game ahead of us, Kyle, on Thursday night. Should be great. Hopefully you found this helpful. Bookmark this for future showdown slates for strategy. And like Kyle said, we're back next episode. I almost said next week, Friday, Kyle, for the main slate. Catch you guys then. Good luck on Thursday night. We will see you Friday.
Thank you for listening to another edition of the Fantasy Footballers DFS and Betting Podcast. Don't forget to visit us on the web at thefantasyfootballers.com.
Labor Day savings are happening right now at the Home Depot. So what are you working on? Prep for fall with our wide selection of cordless power tools that make it easy to clear your lawn starting at $79. And once the leaves are clear, keep your yard looking fresh with colorful mums that bloom all season long. Shop Labor Day savings now through September 3rd only at the Home Depot. See select stores for details.